Listen, some of y'all are slaves to y'all emotions and it shows. And I'm going to whip y'all into shape today because we're talking about how to handle your emotions, especially in your single season. Go ahead and cue my theme music. Hey Rebel, welcome to Untoxify Your Relationship. Here we will talk about all things healthy and how to get that toxic mess out of you and your partnership. I'm your host, Melissa Webb, a practicing licensed mental health therapist with 10 years experience. All right, let's go ahead and hop into it. Hey y'all, so first things first, if you have not voted for Untoxify Your Relationship and Best Faith-Based Podcast in the Women in Podcasting Award, go ahead and click that link in the bio to go ahead and vote for this show for Best Faith-Based because we trying to win out here in these streets, okay? Second thing is let's start the show because I got a lot to talk about. It's a lot to say, and y'all in for a really good treat this episode. So, story time. When I was single, y'all, I sucked at managing my emotions. I sucked at managing my loneliness, my anxiety, even being tired and bored, and even my happiness. I struggled to manage that. I remember vividly in college when I was single and I always needed just to be around people because I didn't like to be lonely. Anytime I was alone, I lived with 3 other girls, 3 of my friends, and I was still lonely. I always needed to have someone around me, especially late at night to warm up my bed, if you know what I'm saying. So I would just go through my Rolodex and be like, who can I call tonight? Needless to say, I'm surprised I did not get pregnant in college. I'm just being real. My anxiety always flared up any time when I was single. I remember a couple of years ago when I was single, my anxiety was so bad that I had to walk around the block in my neighborhood a couple of times just to calm down. It was late at night too. I was tripping, but my anxiety got so bad because I was so concerned about wanting to be loved and wondering if someone was going to love me, right? Even in happiness, even when I was happy, I could not enjoy happiness because for some reason my thoughts and feelings were always, I need to share this with a partner. Because if I'm not sharing this with a partner, then it doesn't matter. Y'all was tripping. Thank God for therapy and the Holy Ghost because your girl was tripping, right? But I also know this is the same thing with other singles. When I was doing one-on-ones with people, this is the same thing. They always would have like a happy moment. They'd be like, well, I can't share with someone, so now I'm sad. Or they're always anxious when they're going to be with someone. Or they're lonely. Or they're bored. Because when you're bored, you might call somebody up because you're horny, right? So all these things come into place, and it all comes down to how do you manage your emotions? Because these emotions are going to come. How you handle them will determine the course of action that you take. So if we're not careful, this is an opportunity for the enemy to creep into our lives and to take over, right? Peter said that the enemy roams like a lion looking for someone to devour, which means if you are caught slipping, he will pounce at the opportunity. So when these emotions come, you have to manage them well, because if not, the enemy is going to be like, oh snap, she tripping. Let me go ahead and get her. And we know when the enemy get us, it's not a good thing. It's not always. I get tired of, right now I'm listening to Darius Daniels and he's talking about spiritual warfare, and he's like really honing in on it's not the demonic, not like these movies where you got possessions and stuff like that. No, it's literally stuff like this, like the thoughts that you have and the feelings that you have. He can easily come in, plant a seed, and next thing you know, you outside and you like, how did I get here? Or someone in your bed and you like, well, how did they get here? Right? So that's what the spiritual warfare is. And you have to be really careful with how you manage your emotions. So today, if you haven't realized, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about emotions. If you're a person who struggles to talk about feelings and emotions, this is the episode for you. So I want you to tune in and see if you can learn something today, because I'm going all the way in. So So get ready, put your seatbelt on. I hope you got the seatbelt on, especially if you're listening to this in the car, because we finna go all the way up. All right. And we're also going to look at David and Bathsheba, because David was tripping. And I got something to say about David. So let's get into it. So, as we know, feelings or emotions are reactions people experience in response to events or situations. When you are single, your singleness can incite various feelings or emotions. There's two things I want to mention when it comes to feelings, right? Feelings can come from two different places. Might be more, but I'm only going to focus on these two. One, it can come from reality, right? The reality is that you are single. And I know I'm only talking to the single folks in this episode, but if you're married and you're listening, the reality is you're married, right? If you're engaged, the reality is you're engaged. If you're like listening to this and you just don't want to be with nobody, the reality is you just don't want to be with nobody, right? And that can bring up different types of emotions. So for example, if you're single and the emotion can be, I'm lonely. If you're married, the emotion can be, I'm lonely, because I don't know what's going on in your marriage, but only you do. And whatever feeling comes up, that's what it is. But whatever it is, the reality is feelings can come from that, the reality, right? Feelings can also come from stories that we make up in our heads, like our thoughts. So this is where the Israelites messed up when they sent the spies to go spy out Canaan. They came back and they said, we feel like grasshoppers when it comes to the giants, and the giants feel like we're grasshoppers, which that really wasn't the case, because 40 years later when they went and they went to Jericho's wall, and Rahab was like, yeah, we've been scared of y'all because we heard about y'all God and we don't know what y'all gonna do. So the whole time they've been thinking like they were grasshoppers, when in reality the people in the land was actually scared of them. So when you have these thoughts of I'm not good enough or I'll never get married, they can influence your feelings, which can invoke sadness or anxiety, which then influences your actions. I don't know what the action will be, but it probably won't be nothing positive, because we had a negative thought process, right? When we have those negative thought process, it brings up these strong emotions, which then lead to negative actions. But we also need to know that feelings are a natural human emotion. Emotions are like guides. They should not lead you. They should always guide you and never lead you. So what does it mean when we say emotions are a guide? A guide is someone giving you instructions or directions. Leading is when they are in front of you and you are following. So if someone is guiding me, they are alongside me giving me directions. They are watching me do it as if they are helping me out in the process, right? Versus someone leading, they are in front and I'm just following, which means I don't know where I'm going because they in front of me. I can't see. The leader is blocking the way and I'm just lost. So in other words, a guide is a helper versus a leader is in control. So we want emotions to guide us. We want the emotions to show up. We want to acknowledge that they're there. And we want the emotions to help us understand our bodies, our triggers, our thought process, like what happens when this thought comes up. And so that's what happens when we use emotions as a guide. Versus what I see a lot of people doing is using emotions as leaders. Because when the emotions get in front of you and they're leading you, you're blinded. You don't know what you about to do. You just out here just letting anger lead you. And wherever anger goes, that's where you goes. And that can get you put in jail. I don't look good in orange, so I try to avoid that, right? You might look good in orange. You might think orange is the new black. Do you, boo-boo? But I'm just letting you know I got a career, a 3-year-old, and a mortgage, and I can't lose any of that. So a lot of times when feelings are leading you, you don't know what's about to happen because, let's say, anger is in the driver's seat, or lust is in the driver's seat, or loneliness is in the driver's seat, or your horniness may be in the driver's seat. Come on here, singles, because guess what? I'm single now, and guess what? I feel all these emotions. It's how I handle it, is how I don't let it be in the driver's seat. In Proverbs, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. So the person who I want to lead me should be Jesus, right? I should not let my emotions lead me. They're going to lead me to destruction. I should allow God, the Holy Spirit, Jesus to lead me in this life because they know where they're going, because they already been there, and time is nothing to them because they Alpha and Omega and they know everything in between. So who I want leading me? Jesus, because he knows the way and he will not lead me wrong. And also, I don't need to see where I'm going if God is leading me because, again, God's already been there. These emotions, they just trying to figure it out as we're leading, right? As they're leading. So we want to be led by Christ, not led by our emotions. In Galatians 5:16, it says, walk by the Spirit and do not gratify the desires of the flesh. When we are led by our feelings, we are gratifying our flesh. The flesh is being gratified when we are being led by our feelings. This goes back to Peter when he said, the enemy prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. When you give into your flesh, it's an opportunity for the enemy to pounce. So just know that when you are being led by your feelings, the enemy is like, yes, that's the person. That's who I want to pounce on. Because at this point, you're weak. You're weak because your flesh can't do nothing. You ain't fighting. At this point, you're not fighting warfare with the spirit. You're fighting warfare with your flesh. And that is a dangerous place to be because the devil will take that opportunity. And this brings us to David and good old Bathsheba. Now, before I start talking about David and Bathsheba, I just want to make it clear that Bathsheba get a bad rap in this whole story. And I just want to let y'all know that she's pretty innocent in this whole thing. Back in the day, it was normal to take baths on the roof. And when this king summoned you, guess what? You had to come or you would die. So I just want to throw that out there before we start talking about Bathsheba, because don't bash Bathsheba, okay? I will come for you. So the first point I want to bring up when it comes to David and Bathsheba is when you are led by your emotions, you end up in the wrong place. In 2 Samuel 11, it says, in the spring, at the time when kings go out to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite armies. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. So instead of David being out here fighting with his men, David chose his desire. His desire was to be at home, because if he desired to be at war, he would have been there. But instead, his desire was to be at the crib in Jerusalem, chilling. Now, when people went out to war and fought, they was with all these dudes. They probably didn't smell the greatest. It was wartime, so it was a lot of probably planning and fighting and all the things. David was like, yeah, I want to be at the crib. Say less. So he was at the crib. So David chose his desires. And we know that desires can lead to an emotion, right? Or either an emotion can lead to a desire. So, for example, let's say you desire to be married and you're currently single. This can lead to feeling like loneliness or sadness. Or let's say your emotion is you're sad because you're single, right? And now you have a strong desire to have a partner. So either way, either your desires can lead to an emotion or your emotion can lead to a desire. I don't know what David's emotion was. The Bible doesn't tell me. I can assume that either his emotions led to his desire or his desire led to an emotion, which led him to a place where he shouldn't have been. So sometimes these emotions and desires can lead us to the wrong place. Example, I'm lonely and my desire to be with someone can lead me to someone's bed or being partnered with the wrong person. For David, his desire might have been to get rest or to be comfy at his crib, right? The emotion he would have got for that is satisfaction. Maybe he felt drained, and which led him to want to desire to be at home, right? David being home wasn't wrong. Hear me when I say this. David being home wasn't wrong. It just wasn't the right place to be. So being outside ain't wrong. It might not be the right place to be. Being at the club ain't wrong, but it might not be the right place you need to be. Calling your ex ain't wrong, but your ex being at your crib might not be the right place he or she need to be. Does that make sense? That it's not wrong, but it ain't right. And when you ain't right, you start doing dumb stuff. So let's just keep that in. It ain't wrong, but it ain't right. Right. So let's just keep that in mind when we are being led by our emotions, because sometimes our emotions will lead us to a place where it ain't wrong to call your ex, but it ain't right for them to be in your bed late at night and y'all doing stuff that y'all ain't supposed to be doing. So just remember that. So number 2, when you're led by your emotions, you end up making impulsive and persistent decisions. So one evening, we're going to continue the story of David. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, I'm pregnant. So this is what David did. He saw, he sent, he hit. Right? He saw Bathsheba. He sent messengers, plural. He sent messengers. That means he was persistent in trying to get this woman at his house. And once she got there, he hit it. So his eyes deceived him, because the first thing he did was he saw. So that means his eyes deceived him. So in 1 John 2nd chapter 15 through 17, it says, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. Lust of the eyes in that verse is the sinful desire to possess what we see, or to have those things which we have visual appeal. David is being led by his emotions. He is literally blinded by lust and making a decision blindly. Remember when I said, when you're led by your emotions, you can't see straight. So then after he finds out Bathsheba is pregnant, he goes in this elaborate plan to literally cover up his sin. Right? He wanted first Uriah to come home and go sleep with Bathsheba. Right? That way the timing would look like, oh, he came home, they had sex, and now she's pregnant. But he didn't want to go because he was loyal and he didn't want to do that. So then he had Uriah killed on the front line. And then after the mourning period, David took Bathsheba as his wife. So that way it looked like, oh, it happened like it should have, right? So the second thing, 2.2, this is still point 2. The second thing of the point is he was blinded by a desire to cover up his sin. So he probably had a lot of emotions going on. One of them was probably scared. He was probably had this pride going because no one could find out that he done this thing with Bathsheba. And he probably was just like, yo, I got to cover this up. What can I do? Let's come up with a plan. Let's kill Uriah. Like David was tripping. And so we can be blinded by our desires, and we can also be blinded by our emotions. I kind of feel like emotions were leading this, which led to this desire to cover up. But at the end of the day, it's wrong, and David was tripping. And the last point of this of David and Bathsheba is when you're led by your emotions, it is displeasing to God. So in the last verses, when Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. David thought he got away with it, y'all, but God sees everything. In the next chapter, Nathan the prophet comes and he says this parable to David, basically talking about this rich man basically taking something so precious from the poor man. And This got David so angry at the rich man. He was like, oh, he should be killed 4 times over. David was just like, how can someone do this to someone? And Nathan was like, bruh, this is you. You are the rich man. And God said this to Nathan when he was talking to David. He's like, God was basically like, I gave you a lot and I would have given you more if what I gave you was too little. And the thing that God does, which I love that he does this, he asks questions. He doesn't ask questions for him, he asks questions for you. So the question he asked David was, why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? So when David heard this, he said, yo, I'm sorry, I messed up. I shouldn't have done that. So there is consequences to our actions, right? There are consequences to when we are led by our emotions. For David, the first thing was he would have calamity in his own house. We know later on his son Absalom was out here wilding out, doing the most and having sex with women outside so everybody can see it. And it's like what you did in private, your son did in public. And so that was the first thing. The second thing was the baby that Bathsheba bore that she had ended up dying. And what I love about God is his grace, that he gives us even when we mess up. So the Lord struck the child with an illness, and David fasted and prayed and wept while the child was sick. And then when the child died, David wiped his face and went into his house and worshiped, and he got some food and he ate. The servants was like, why are you acting this way? First you were like weeping and fasting, now you chilling. And David literally said, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. I thought, who knows, the Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now that he is dead, why should I go on fasting? Can I bring him back? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. And that is a saying who David is, right? David was so like, maybe if I do this, maybe God will be gracious to me. That wasn't the case. And he's like, okay, that's my consequence. I'm going to move on. And he moved on, had, relations with Bathsheba, and they end up having Solomon, one of the wisest kings ever. And that's the grace of God, that even in our struggle, even in our mess ups, our mistakes, there is still grace for our mistakes. And God will still bless you and keep you and give you grace for when you make mistakes. Jesus said, my grace is sufficient, which is a really real thing. I can even talk for myself. I had a baby out of wedlock, and God kept telling me my grace is sufficient. And I didn't know what that meant until having a child, and even before I had the kid, just like the donations I received, how I didn't have to worry about anything, how even after the baby was born, I had so much help and so much support from people. And it was like what I thought was going to be hard, God was like, no, I'm still going to give you grace. Even though you messed up, daughter, I'm still giving you grace. And I have the greatest kid ever. I'm not just saying that because that's my kid. Because trust me, I've been around some bad 3-year-olds. I've seen daycare, right? I've been at the daycare my kid goes to. And he is the quietest, sweetest kid ever. And I just thank God for him every day and the grace that he bestowed upon me, even in my mistakes. So if you are led by your emotions, just know there's grace for your mistakes. I'm not telling you to abuse grace. However, I am saying let's go get some wise counsel, right? To figure out how we can become emotionally intelligent, how you can manage your emotions. So wise counsel, y'all know, is that someone who is wise that can help you with the things that you have going on. So whether that's a therapist, a pastor, a pastor's wife, your best friend, a book, whatever. We need some wise counsel to help you manage these emotions. And once you get that, you got to put things into practice. I would say study the word, put those things into practice, because this good book talks about emotions and how to handle them. So I would just say at the end of the day, there is still hope. There's still hope. You can still manage your emotions, you can always go talk to someone about this. I always tell people go see a therapist because you got a good one, they will get you together. They will whip you into shape. So don't be led by your emotions. Emotions are a guide. And if you need help managing them, go get you a therapist. Go talk to someone and get that worked out. All right? And that's it. That's the post. So I hope this was helpful in learning about managing your emotions. I don't care what season you're in. This is helpful for any season, right? To know how to manage your emotions, because being led by anger or sadness or depression or whatever, it will get you nowhere. So we need to make sure that we're using these emotions as a guide and they're not playing follow the leader, because we ain't doing that today. Tell your auntie, uncle, and cousin and them. Also tell them about voting for your girl for Best Faith-Based Podcast. As always, stay non-toxic, stay classy, and I will see you next time. Peace. Thank you for listening. Go ahead and share this episode with your family and friends. Don't forget to check out the quiz to figure out what your toxic trait is. The link is in the show notes. Thank you, and see you next time.